Hello and welcome to the People, Place and Nature podcast. Today we have something a little bit different from normal, as we have our first virtual podcast episode where we're joined by the fantastic Ramon Alejandro De Hoyos Cantu, CEO and founder of ALIS, a startup and cutting-edge nature-based solutions company developing new algal solutions and technologies based in Mexico. So to save on our carbon footprint, here we are online. Apologies for any technical issues, as this was our first time doing it this way, and it was a steep learning curve. It's not as easy as just doing sort of a Teams or Zoom meeting. In this episode, we talk about algae solutions, what emerging technologies and uses for algae that there are, the challenges and opportunities and the technologies face. So if you're interested in sustainability, tech, water, nature-based solutions, or algae, this is a really interesting one for you. Hope you enjoy. Sorry to interrupt, but this episode is sponsored by Water Offsets. If you are working on projects where you might need environmental credits, then they are the people to go to. They specialise in not only biodiversity net gain credits, but also water neutrality and nutrient neutrality too. So if you have an estate, a farm, or some other kind of landowner, or interested in that kind of project, then they could really help you find new ways of funding those projects and diversifying your land and farms to take you through the whole process. And if you're a developer who's run into problems, then actually they can help provide those credits that you need to unlock your land and get your development done. So check out Water Offsets if you need help with any of those things. Many thanks.
Ramon, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really happy to have you here. This is really strange because this is the first, and I think it's definitely the only online one we're doing as part of the first season of the podcast. So we've had a few technical challenges, but we've got past them all, which is good. And we're here now talking, which is the key thing. So I'm super excited to have you on. I was really hoping to see you in Mexico and have a look at some of what was going on there. So we're going to try and do sort of a bit of a hybrid podcast here where actually you can go and sort of film some stuff later around your lab and everything that we can sort of edit in so people can see a bit of the process and how cool it looks. Because it's really interesting seeing the lab and all the stuff in there. So that'd be really exciting. And then just to touch a bit on sort of how we met initially. So we met as part of the Connected Places Catapult, which was sort of a program bringing companies and experts working on sort of net zero solutions together. And we met in Brazil, actually. And it was quite interesting because we wrote a bid for a project in Mexico, where you're based, to tackle sort of the water challenges there. And you did the same thing for Mexico. And we all ended up getting flown to Brazil to sort of talk about the solution and how it can sort of be applied elsewhere. And since then, we've been doing, really quite a lot together. And, we partnered the businesses and all sorts of things. So super exciting. Super glad to have you here. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry for the technical challenges, and fantastic to see you again.
Thank you very much, Neil. No, it's really, really good to see you. And thank you for having me on the podcast, and for everyone watching and listening. Hi to all of you. And you're going to have a good time learning about algae and all these wonderful organisms, what they are and what they are capable of doing for us. So thanks a lot, Neil. And
brilliant. Yeah, I'm excited. So I guess we should start off by you explaining what microalgae are and sort of why they're so important and interesting.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Well, just let me start by saying that maybe you should all have listened or seen macroalgae, the big algae that's used mainly for sushi or you can see in the living in the sea, like these big plants, aquatic plants that are like tangling there, and they're macroalgae. They're a kind of algae, but they are macroscopic. You can see them. And microalgae, they're microscopic. You cannot see them with the naked eye. You need a microscope to see them. And these tiny organisms, they live in the water. They habitat every environment that we know of. Can be a desert, can be a sea, can be a lake, a lagoon, a river. They live there, different species adapted to live there. And these organisms, that the most important thing about them is that they can do the same as macroalgae and trees and plants. They can do photosynthesis. They use sunlight in order to capture the carbon and dioxide in the environment, and they use it to breathe, and they release oxygen in exchange. They capture CO2 using sunlight, and they generate oxygen. So those are the biggest features of microalgae. Also, that I don't know if you knew, but these microorganisms and their predecessors were the first inhabitants of the earth that really started transforming the environment that we had those early days in the planet, on the planet, and they started changing everything, and they started generating oxygen, and the oxygen started accumulating from 3.5 billion years ago until now, and that helped us a lot to evolve and to really start moving forward things in a biological aspect. So that's microalgae. That's what these organisms are what are important for, and that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so interesting, and it's something that you kind of are aware of maybe in your fish tank or something like that, but otherwise you don't really hear about them unless perhaps there's sort of an algal bloom, which you get sort of in water supplies or in the sea or wherever it may be, which starves it of oxygen and causes lots and lots of problems. So you kind of always have this like negative connotation with algae, don't you? You always think, oh no, it's a big disaster if there's lots of algae, or actually it's making my fish tank really murky. But what you guys are doing is finding ways to actually make use of it and utilize it in all different processes and applications to sort of use it to our advantage. So I guess we should talk a bit about that. So why are they so interesting, and what sort of things have you been finding out about algae and what they can sort of be used for?
Yes, of course. Let me tell you about that. Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, Neil, that's how we started in the world of algae also, thinking it was it was pollution to our tank. We were developing early stages of algae. We were developing a lot of stuff regarding specifically aquaponics, and like this synergy that fish and plants get together in order to have a synergy that can grow plants with the fish in the circular system. And we were developing that, and we started getting algae in the tubes, in the PVC pipes that we had the plants on. And we were like, okay, we need to get rid of those because they're eating the food of the plants. And we were having problems with them. And that's where we really started like looking into algae and all the benefits that it has, and what it can do for us instead of what it was why it was damaging our system, our food production system from the fish. But yeah, but algae has a lot of uses, and that's mainly why they are very important and taking a lot of conversations right now, are in a lot of conversations, because with algae, you can basically obtain protein. You can use it to obtain alternative protein, full amino acid compound, and the food that you build with algae is good for you, and it has all the important amino acids that you need, the essential ones. That's really good. Also, you can generate diets to also like aquaculture, like for feedstock. And something really cool about it is when you formulate stuff with algae to give to the cows, like or to use in the feedstock, this feedstock generate less pollution, like less methane, than when feed other kind of food, or when they feed from natural sources, because algae generates less in their stomach, generates less greenhouse gases that are actually gets expelled later for the cow. That's why they are really polluting animals, and that's why the chain of the beef is super or that food chain is really complicated. So that's some of the applications in the food sector. Also, you can extract the molecules from different species of algae and go beyond and formulate special things that are functional. That's what we do. We focus on the cosmetic and food industry, but specifically formulations of high value, functional formulations, molecules of algae that substitutes 5 or 6 synthetic molecules in food products with just one thing. That's what we are working on, but that's another application of algae, high value molecules for those kind of markets, including pharmaceutical markets, where they can have a lot of good into the health of the people and recovering diseases and recovering people from diseases and having early recoveries or fast recoveries from other serious problems. They can help you with that. And also they can do a lot of things in the biofuel industry. They have been like these last 4 decades investigated for that purpose, like in the biofuel industry. They are seeing different advantages and disadvantages. Right now, it's it's in the low end. I mean, you cannot. It's not sustainable. It's not how you say it like that. It's not worth it to use the microalgae oil to do biofuels just yet.
Yeah, not cost effective.
Yeah, it's not cost effective yet for all the processes that you have to do with the living algae, and the different companies are starting to look other places, like for that use of that algae, like a biostimulant or biofertilizer. There's another application of algae that's really good. All that goes into the vegetable and the fruit production, all in the land and agriculture sites. And that's a really good application that has a lot of boom right now. The biostimulants with microalgae extracts, because they are really good. They can help moderate the appearance of different plagues in the plant. They can make it really strong in order to sustain all the environment effects. They help them to maintain water. They give the nutrients. These stimulants give the nutrients to the plant and help them to grow faster and better. So that's why algae is really good to the soil market and the agricultural market, because all those points. If it is good for you to eat, it's good for the land, and that's one way to put it. But we have a lot of applications. We can use also algae. I mean, that's another application that we at Alice do. We clean water with microalgae, but with living algae. Those applications involve the algae, the living cell, eating basically pollution from waterways. And that way, the nitrogen, phosphorus, ammonia, metal, salts, all the stuff that's polluting the river, we can place a tank with that water, place algae in, and the algae using the sunlight will eat all of those contaminants out, and then we can separate the algae and obtain clean water. That's another good application with algae that we have right now, and also the carbon capture part of algae that basically naturally does. So it's like you have a stream of greenhouse gases. You put it to a streamline, you cool it up a little, and then you feed it to the algae, and the algae will use those gases to feed from and to grow and to eat and grow and divide. So as you can see, those are like some applications that algae have, because there are a lot more applications in different sectors of the industry, of the health sector, at the industrial level. You can use it in a lot of ways, because all the byproducts that you can obtain from them, oils, food, feed fibers, textiles, pigments. I mean, you can obtain a lot of stuff in a natural and sustainable way. And those are kind of the most promising and developing areas of algae that are taking off real quick because of all the benefits that it has. But I'm gonna stop there, Neil, because if not, you will never stop me by telling everything that algae can do. I mean, there are a lot of stuff that algae can do, and I invite everyone that is looking at this podcast to go and research what you can do with algae. Maybe it will fit in something that you are already doing in a direct or indirect way.
No, that's fascinating. It's really is incredibly interesting. It's why we started sort of talking in the first place, isn't it? Because of the range of applications for it. I mean, we obviously are more involved a lot now with sort of water resilience and things like that, looking at how we manage water systems better and restore damaged ecosystems, as well as sort of general water resilience in smart cities and things.
Yes.
Well, circularity is so interesting. So I guess we'll start with circularity bit.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I found very interesting is where you've got large sort of treatment plants or works or whatever, all those gases and everything are being released, as CO2 or whatever into the atmosphere, and there's no real use for them. There's no value in sort of saving them really, unless they're funded by sort of carbon offsetting or whatever, someone's actually paying them to do it. Whereas this way you can actually potentially utilize that to make some sort of product and then also stop the carbon emissions. But similarly, we've looked at a project together where there's actually a lot of contaminated water from sort of chemical processes and things like that. And we're starting to look at whether or not actually the algae can eat those chemicals, but then also can it produce the products that are going into that process in the first instance? So it's not just like cleaning up the waste, it's actually converting that waste back into something that's usable in the original process. So you're sort of building a really holistic system of recovering all that waste product and just changing it to be usable again. So it's super interesting in the way it can be applied to so many sort of different circumstances. And one other one I know that you'll love to get the opportunity to plug here is your lamps you've created as well. So this is quite aside to one of the side projects, but again, very sort of interesting. So I don't know if you want to talk a bit about this and sort of air quality improvement.
Yes, of course. Well, yeah, when we started talking, we were completely focused on these two areas of the environmental bioremediation with algae, the water part and the transformation of public sites and air filtration and capture with microalgae. That's what we were mostly focused on, and we still are, but we are taking off so much right now because we have a next year plan where we're going to start a plant where we are going to be using holistically, as you said, the microalgae benefits. We're going to have our container or our system or water reuse system where we clean water with algae connected to a direct stream of a boiler used for generating heat using natural gas. So it generates a lot of gases and a gas streamline, abundant gas streamline when it's on. And we're going to be capturing it and actually neutralizing it with algae. It's a full, complete system that will be having in the water part is going to be using water rejected by an osmosis plant. It's very salty water, so water that is super, super salty and contaminated with nitrogen and phosphorus. And we're going to be using the whole system to clean the water, capture carbon, generate oxygen, and generate molecules that this company here in Mexico is going to be reusing as a biostimulant for the soil. So they're going to be making better some places that they have where they don't have like plants and they don't have like this green area. They have just like a big dirty area. Like you can just see the soil by itself with no green. And that's because it's wasted. That land is depleted from nutrients. It's just erosionating, and the erosion is hitting it very hard. And we're trying to recover those sites that they have in their facility and within their facility and the surroundings. They are super big company. They're a massive company. In extension, there are, I don't know, like 1,000 hectares of extension. It's like a super big company. So we're going to start doing that holistic process that you just talked about in an experimental case that we're going to have a very good input and feedback in the next year. And it will be great to talk about that project specifically next year, maybe in another podcast, in another. But yeah, I mean that's the one way to put it. Microalgae can do a lot of stuff, and that's one way to do it. You can have these better and most efficient plants that can regulate or can offset the gases that of the water facility that you already have. Because as Neil said, water treatment plants generate nitrogen oxides. They generate CO2 passively because bacteria that are breaking all those contaminants out are generating those gases by their metabolisms. So normal wastewater treatment facilities or regular wastewater treatment facilities that use old technology generate gases. So that's a direct relation. And with our module or with our system, what we can do is we couple our algae process to that water treatment facility existing, or can be inside of outside. I mean, offsite in other place where we can grab the water and clean it. But that way we can use that recycled or treated water and convert it into recycled water to finish cleaning we can finish to clean it, then we can use that algae and all that biomass generated into other things. But once you clean it, you're offsetting with the algae the gases that are generated with the treatment plant. So those NO2 and CO2 that you are generating are offset by the algae oxygen generation and all the cleaning of the water and the capture. You can just get the balance there. So that way you can neutralize your existing water treatment facility with our process. Or we can start all over again. I mean, if you say, hey, we don't want this treatment plant, is outdated, we want to build a new one, what can you offer us to build a new plant? That we can do also, and that's what algae can do. We can start a whole treatment process. Doesn't matter the intake of water that you have. You can always have pre-treatments and stages preview to get the water to the quality that the algae needs it, and you can clean it with this process. Algae can clean that because they naturally eat those contaminants. They naturally eat nitrogen, phosphorus, ammonia, metals, salts, and other. And they do a lot of stuff to these emerging contaminants like medicines, pharmaceuticals, and stuff that they remove them from the water via, they metabolize them, they break it up, or they and inhibits the activity of that specific pharmaceutical and neutralize it, or they stick that chemical stick to them, to their body, and then when they get taken out of the water, that contaminant also gets taken out of the water. So there are different metabolisms and different physical factors where microalgae enters to the cleaning process, and that's something that we are taking advantage of and taking a service to the companies in order to have a better value chain of production, or production value chain, because right now most of it is linear, and you know, Neil, that right now we need circular, and that's the way nature does it. That's the way we need to do it. We need to have circular processes that are technological and nature-based solutions combined in order to have those loops and be able to generate a lot of reuse, a lot of stuff in order to not have waste, and also that waste that gets generated, because we know, I mean, the world is not perfect. We always wanna have waste, but we need to find ways to transform that waste that we have into good inputs to other parts of the process in order to reuse everything and generate a clean production industry, manufacturing, automobile. I mean, all the industrial efforts or industrial fronts that we have right now are linear, and we need to change that. And that's what Alice is working to do with the water and the reutilization of waste part. That's I wanted to make an emphasis in there, focus in there. And we also have the part that you said, the lamps. And these lamps is what it hears. It's a lamp, an algae lamp. It's like a big glass cylinder where you have
like a blob lamp. I always think of it as, you know, those ones you used to get like 20 years ago or so. I would be very much with that. Yeah.
Yeah, like lava lamps or
lava lamps. Yeah.
Yeah, that is something like that. The difference is that it has living algae in it, and it has a light source that's constantly making the algae do photosynthesis. So it's constantly doing photosynthesis, is generating oxygen in interior spaces. These lamps are mostly for interior spaces, the ones that are individual. That you can have it on your desk, you can have it on some place in your home, where you can have this air filtration effect and this oxygen generation effect within or inside of where you are, at the place where you are. Also, it's very relaxing. It has very relaxing noises, because the bubbling through the water, it makes that motion in your brain that makes you relax. So that's something really, really interesting about them, and makes you focus and stuff. We use them quite a bit in meetings with big clients in the negotiation room, and hard negotiations come along best if we have lamps because there everything flows best. Also, they are looking at something that you are doing with algae that's really interesting and really shifts the towards stuff. I mean, you're
Yeah, I was just saying, it's useful as well. There's more oxygen, so you're less likely to start falling asleep during the meeting, which is helpful. I know everyone's a bit more alert, aren't they?
Yes, they are alert, and they are like really they are amazed by it, because it's something that kind of the Dexter lab kind of thing. That's something that takes you back to your early roots when you were growing up. It's something different. It's something futuristic in the present, and that's what we need right now. We need good things that help the environment, that are seen like futuristic, but are here right now, and they are generating change and transforming cities right now. Because this little lamp that I've talked to you about, in a big way or in a massive way, things that we are doing right now with the Monterrey government and San Nicolas government, where we live, we are transforming spaces, public spaces, with this algae. We design specifics like areas that we call biodynamic areas, where you have all these reactors placed in a way, very architectural and beautiful way in the city, mixing with everything that already has the city, or the layout that you already have with plants and stuff. And we are changing the environment with these lamps. They are filtering the air. They have a motor that is getting the air, is filtering the air to the lamps, is generating oxygen. It has a lot of information for the people that goes by that can see everything, like, hey, what's that? That's really interesting. Hey, what's that? And they can understand what's there, right? But also these spaces that we design, we include a lot of high definition sensors, or very sensitive sensors, to be measuring the pollution in the air. I mean, we need to have that data is super important. And that's mainly one of the things that we offer to the government. Like, hey, we need to expand our air quality network, because it's super polluted. I mean, Monterrey is super polluted, and we need to start looking at what are the gases that are hurting us, right? What are those gases? What are the concentrations of them? Where they go? And we created this project as an holistic way, where you can have the algae, all the beneficial effects of biotechnology into society. That's the mission of Alice. That's when we started. Alice is our company, and that's the mission of it. And we're getting there slowly, but right now we are starting that. And yeah, those systems are going to be generating oxygen, filtering particles, carbon, methane, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxides, a lot of toxic molecules, and are going to be expelling oxygen and clean air out of them. So those are the things that we are trying to make circular, because they are very, very polluted right now.
Yeah, it's a really big challenge. I mean, going back slightly as well to what you're talking about earlier, it reminds me of some of the sort of challenges or technologies I've sort of seen in the past. Yeah. So I was just going to ask you sort of some of the sort of stumbling blocks that have like limited this being like rolled out more often or more significantly. So on this very one, I've seen before. I remember seeing years ago a concept around algae taking air through water on sort of really busy motorways or tunnels where the air pollution is really heavily concentrated within the tunnel, to try and catch it as it's coming out the tunnel, feed it through the algae, and then utilize it. But you don't really see them being sort of rolled out.
Yes.
Apart from beyond those pilots. So do you know some of the challenges that there are sort of around that other projects have run into maybe?
Yes. I mean, these applications of algae are really are hard for government type of individuals, because I mean the technology is really good. I mean, it can help a lot, and you can do a lot of good with it. But at the infrastructure level, to sometimes it gets difficult. The conversation turns difficult that way, because In Mexico, for example, it's difficult because the people in the power, they are just thinking about their 3 years or 6 years. They're not thinking in the future. They're just thinking in their present. And that really takes the
Sounds
conversation.
incredibly familiar.
No, tell us about it. But yeah, I mean, it's going towards that. But you you need to go from the bottom of the effort in order and take it all the way up. It's not like you can go halfway and just take it to the last bit of, you need to push it to the last bit. Is push everything. And it's really difficult to this kind of technologies like biotechnologies focusing the environment to be taken into account, because normally they don't see science that way, like the way that can do good to the environment. So in order for you to really do all the work and have all push it all, is really difficult. And sometimes the government, the persons, I mean, the people that take the decision, the final decision, you never get to him, and that's where everything stops. Also, it's incredibly complicated. I mean, it's not like you just take the water or take the air and bubble it through the pond. I mean, it's an engineering marvelous design and stuff that we are working on, and the biotechnology needs to be like that in order to be environmentally and have an impact in the environment, a real impact in the environment. You need to be taking every step into account. You need to be measuring everything. You need to have the data, the real data. It's not just like, let's do that and okay, we are capturing X quantity of CO2. No, you need to have the data, and that's what really makes everything complicated. I think that's where the conversation gets really rough. Like, okay, where is this deployed? Okay, it's deployed in Singapore and deployed in Canada, and deployed in London, and deployed in Mexico, in other places. Let's do it within the city. It's deployed outside the city, and let's do it within. No, you need a lot of land, or you need. No, we have this containerized system that doesn't require land, that we can grow into a tower, and we can clean the water, and we can generate oxygen within the cities, and we can filter the polluted air within the cities. This technology that we have is different. You need to start the conversation again. Doesn't matter how many people behind you have already started or talked about it. With biotech and with the government and with the companies that doesn't know about what you're doing and doesn't know the technology that you're talking about, is what's most difficult. And that's that's why it delays the entering to the market, but is starting. I mean, the microalgae are getting a lot of attention, Neil, you know this. And some people tell us that microalgae, they're how you say, when they're a moda, when they're like they're cool right now, but they're not gonna be cooler a long time. They're being cool all their life. I mean, 3.5 billion, they're being cool. We're just realizing that. I mean, we as a society, we're just realizing how good they are for us. That's why they are cool right now. But that doesn't mean they're not good or they haven't been good. I mean, and it's kind of that common forward with the guys and with the government and with the companies that really gets like, okay, well, let's try this, but how are we going to do it? And then we start all the planning and the sites and all the stuff. Takes a lot of time. It's not like selling a car, or like selling a burrito, or like selling a piece of land. Even it takes a lot of time, and that's
absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the trouble, isn't it? It has to, I mean, and rightly so in some cases, right, that it goes through a bureaucratic process to make sure we're not putting anything dangerous or anything in public realm, wherever it may be. But at the same time, it's an incredibly laborious process. I mean, we're doing some projects at the moment where we're trialing some new technologies in the UK. And, part of that process is monitoring absolutely everything. And it's crazy how much you have to be able to do to actually demonstrate that this thing works. And you think, well, this thing's just recycling water. Like, can't we just monitor the water that it's recycling? But no, you've got to look at apps absolutely everything around that as well. Which is the right thing to do, but it's like makes the process so slow and complicated at the same time. You think, oh, maybe it'd be easier to just focus on that bit, but yeah, and rightly so. You need to look at everything. I just wanted to pick up one other thing from earlier, which was around just sticking with the issues for a moment and the challenges. One of the other ones I wanted to pick up was around aviation and like aviation fuel, because again, this is something I'd seen a bit about before and sort of read about before talking to yourself. And I know it's not something you guys are really involved with, but I don't know if you know too much about the challenges around sort of biofuels from algae, because you mentioned it already. But my very, very limited understanding is it's something to do with is it the centrifuge where you're separating the algae from the water or from whatever else it was to then process it is incredibly energy intensive. So my understanding is that is part of the challenge. But do you know if there's are there any other sort of like technical challenges around sort of like utilizing it as a product that way? That sort of we're jumping ahead a bit here, because I wanted to ask you about some of the hurdles and challenges that like the technology faces and where sort of innovation needs to happen, or things you guys are working on to sort of take it forward. But just because it's come up a couple of times, I thought it'd be interesting to pick it up while we're talking about it, basically.
Well, specifically in aviation biofuel, I mean, it's the most promising application actually for the biofuel area of microalgae, because aviation fuel is regularly super expensive. I mean, the one most expensive for the operation of the airlines, and I mean, they need it. It's crazy the amount of fuel that the aviation industry consumes. I mean, it's a lot, and they need it like always. I mean, they cannot stop, because if not, they don't fly. And that way it's super important, and they are looking into ways to getting a source of fuel that can help them. It doesn't matter if and let me tell you that I have heard that it doesn't matter even if it is like expensive, a little bit more expensive or the same price, they will buy it, because they need it. They need it. The problem is in getting it like from petroleum sources or normal sources is getting expensive by the minute. And with algae, that biofuel is gonna be more in equilibrium. It's gonna hit a price, but it's gonna stay more in equilibrium. And it's really good. I mean, that it has been tested before. The fuel for aviation industry from algae, the biofuel from aviation industry from algae. So it has been tested. It's good. It works really good. The engines take it really good. I think there are different like small modifications or non-modifications. I mean, small variances that you have with normal fuel. But I mean, in the whole step is really good. I mean, it's a good substitute of normal fuel. You can use it, and you won't have problems like it's just like using normal fuel. But it's not that the optimum level. How can I say it? It's not the same as normal fuel, but it works the same way. That's like
so it's maybe not as efficient, but like efficient, way, not quite as efficiency.
We have there's a discussion also in that the efficiency test point of view. I'm saying it works the same way. I'm not like it works the same way, because if we get into that, it gets a lot. We get into a lot of details that are really specific that really doesn't. But it works good, but. The problem there with the algae growing to be biofuel for the aviation industry is the volume and the scale that you need in order to have a good proportion of biofuel to be able to sustain an airport operation as a normal provider, right? O sea, it takes a lot of steps. One thing is you get the algae oil, the algae biofuel, the algae oil, then the algae biofuel, and then you put it in a plane and it can fly. That's one thing, right? You can get enough quantity to fill a plane, maybe, with a big production process going on right now, big, because you need a lot of of oil of algae to do this. So when you have that, then you have to figure out, okay, it works, but now I need to fill a tank daily of 1 million gallons, just to say something, right? How I'm gonna do that, right? I need a scale of 100x and 3,000 acres and all this and this amount of energy and all of that. And even then, for the aviation industry in Kentucky, I believe they have Kentucky in the United States, they have something going on regarding that. Specifically for the aviation industry, something that they are really big working on a lot of years, like 10 years, just to get to that industry. And they continue to work, but they estimate that maybe in 10 years they will be at a scale where they can start implementing some fuel to the planes, because it's not like, okay, I'm gonna buy from you right now, but if you don't have, I'm gonna steal you. No, you need to be able to continue to provide the biofuel, and that makes it a lot harder. In order to transform it, you need a lot of energy, you need a lot of stuff, temperature and stuff that you need, and in order to get that fuel and then get it that way that you're going to put it into the tank, so you need to clean and do a lot of processes. All that is a big process. I mean, is by itself is something super huge, because the aviation industry is massive. So that's a good point that you mentioned there, that the biofuel from the aviation industry is the most promising source of biofuel that we have with microalgae right now, researching through the world, because biodiesel already has gone out in a lot of big company names. They already said, like, okay, we try everything. Right now is simpler for us to continue extracting oil from the ground instead of building algae to transform oil. So
well, this is it, isn't it? It's the associated costs, and the other environmental impacts. Like, there's a lot of cereal crops, like we have oilseed rape here in the UK, and that's used for biofuel sometimes. So, which is great, but actually then you're taking like productive food land, agricultural land out of use, and then that's just shifting food production to somewhere else, which is not perhaps managing it in the best way. So you're not really like solving the problem. And also, again, the sheer amount of land that you need is crazy. I mean, this is the problem with fossil fuels, right? They're too good, they're too efficient. Like that's the challenge. And then with the algae as well, I remember from looking at this before that one of the big challenges, as you said, is just the amount of land and space you need to actually create the volume just makes it basically unaffordable, essentially, because the scale required is so vast. So it kind of, in my mind, I kind of see it like two ways. There's like, you either go like really industrial on this like big scale, but it's really expensive to do and quite challenging. But then also, doing something like what you're doing, where actually you're utilizing it in lots and lots of, you sort of have lots and lots of small little plants and interventions all over the place. And like cumulatively, actually, you end up creating a significant volume, which can then be utilized, but it's just not centralized. So it's how, it's the sort of two different approaches, basically. And it's like, it's not necessarily that one is better than the other. It's just, each has got their own set of challenges, right? And it's difficult to figure out like what's the best. And actually, we should probably try everything at this point, to try and accelerate the process.
Yes, we need every solution that's out there. We need it combined, and we need it working towards helping the environment. Because if not, doesn't matter that you created something really good. Doesn't matter that you have a patent. Doesn't matter anything. If you don't focus what you're doing to help the environment, it won't matter what you're doing at the end. So that's our philosophy. And in the biofuel industry, they hit a point where they are looking for alternatives. But as you said, they're too cheap, too expensive, too cheap and too good. And that's why they are the oil is too cheap and too good to not continue to use it, and everything runs on it. So it's not a matter that we're gonna stop using all of the oil-based fuels and stuff from one day to the other. No, it's going to be a transition. We need to first get to a phase where clean energy is at a stage where you can start supplementing some, or then can start like substituting some of the fuel-based fuel-based energy production methods, right? Yeah, and that way, when you're at that point, you're going to continue growing. You're going to continue lowering this, and at a point, a long years ago, or a lot of years later, we're going to have a lot of renewable energy and a little bit of fossil fuel. But we're never going to get rid of this little part of fossil fuel, because we need it in the main. We need it to do the basic stuff. To do the basic stuff, that's going to be always. We want to be always needing that fuel, but we want to have a lot more here.
Yeah, indeed. No, I kind of agree with you really there. I think it's much more likely to go that way, and there's always going to be some places where it's like still utilized or whatever. Okay, so I still have a couple of other questions for you actually.
Yeah.
So they're going to jump around slightly. So one was going back to the application side, because you talked about sort of producing oxygen. And I remember you talking to me previously that there's actually a lot of applications for producing oxygen that you typically wouldn't think of, which is what struck me. So one of them was around, there's lots of water courses that are actually really depleted in oxygen, and that you can actually, and also it's quite slightly, what's the word? Contradictive, because as I mentioned at the start, the sort of big algal blooms and things are depleting oxygen massively in water. But similarly, you can use microalgae to actually produce oxygen in water. So maybe you could explain a little bit about that and how it can be used to sort of tackle that problem.
Yes, of course. Well, let me. You talk about a point that's really interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of waterways that are fully depleted of oxygen. Mostly, the water that's most depleted of oxygen that I know of from a process is from the hydroelectric generation, because the turbines suck out all the oxygen that has the water, and the water when goes to the waterway has almost zero oxygen in it. I don't know if you knew that, but the water that goes out of the hydroelectric generation has very small quantity or very few oxygen, and that water in an example that you don't have oxygen in the water, molecules, oxygen in the water molecules. I mean, you have the H2O, but you don't have like any more oxygen in the water.
Yeah, there's no like free oxygen.
There's no free oxygen yet, and there's a lot of water like that. You use the algae you place the water and the algae inside the tank, and you will have the algae in a matter of hours to take the levels of oxygen up to almost normal levels, like 5 milligrams of oxygen per liter. So it's normal because algae generates oxygen like really quick. I mean, it's what they do. So they get hit by sunlight. They're like, okay, to dissipate that energy molecule that just hit them, bouncing off their different antennas, that the residual electric signal goes into breaking a water molecule, and they break a water molecule, and that's from where the oxygen gets released. Right? The water, photosynthesis is a really complicated process that the scientists through the world are continually investigating. They don't know how it works. I mean, photosynthesis is something really, really complicated. Taking that into the normal pathways of the algae, that's how it does it. They receive the light energy, and they use that light energy to break the water molecule, where the H goes within them to fulfill electric and chemical stuff within their cell, and the oxygen is a gas. That gas flows like it is, and it gets accumulated.
That was my question. Yeah, I was like, have we found a way to make hydrogen as well? But no, that's the bit they're eating. So that makes sense.
It's the water molecule that they're breaking. We need to see to be like an algae. I mean, if you had the molecule here, you're surrounded by water, and you have a strong cell wall that is inside has water. And that way, the molecules that are hitting the cell, it goes the energy molecule goes through the wall and hit the water molecule that is inside the wall. And that's the water molecule that gets broken off, and the gas gets released from inside the cell because it's gas, right? And another water molecule that is outside takes its place. The water permeability in the membrane is always going to be hydrated. So you need to have that mechanism. And algae has a special mechanisms that's carbon capture accumulating mechanisms. They have an enzyme that's when they have gas, CO2, they started accumulating it inside the cell in order for that enzyme to always have CO2 and to be at its maximum efficiency converting it. So it's a integrated process in the micro level, but it's a very efficient one. And that's what has got us here. But yeah, microalgae generate oxygen directly from the water molecules that are surrounding them. And that's why oxygen gets generated in super, super fast, because light is constantly hitting the algae. And that light needs to be dissipated somewhere and goes to energy processing and oxygen generation. That's photosynthesis in a nutshell, in a very normal level. But I mean, that's why they can generate. And instead, like algae blooms, as you said, algae blooms are ways that are depleted with, they don't have, they have a mixture of bad algae generating toxins and a mixture of bad things happening because the water doesn't have oxygen in it and has a lot of contaminants and toxins. So there are efforts where you apply a special kind of algae, normal wild type kind of algae concentrated into a lake that's depleted and has algae blooms, and that algae that you just put in displace or replace the bad algae, and they start generating oxygen. They start feeding of the bad things that the algae have, and they start to be more as the bad one, and they start like overproducing all the good stuff, and the water gets clean passively just by adding algae and increasing oxygen and removing pollutants. So that's a way to do it. Another way to do it is to remove it, like in a physical remotion, but that's super expensive and it's almost not cost effective. It's almost never used. And the other one is to oxygenate and oxidize the water, like heavily oxidize the water in order to remove all those contaminants, kill the bad algae, and also bring back oxygen to the.
I met a company recently where they're using acoustics to control algal blooms.
Oh yeah, because they break the wall. They use sonication. They break the wall of the algae via acoustic waves, like very hard pulses and acoustic waves. They break the cell membrane or the cell wall of the bad algae, and that you can clean HABs or harmful algae blooms with that, and you can also use it to clean water, like with sonication. You break the bacteria out and stuff with sonic waves.
Well, I saw that this one, what it does is it makes the algae move lower in the water column as well. So what it does is it shifts them in the water column to like where there's less sunlight, and then they photosynthesize less effectively. So it reduces the risk or the frequency of algal blooms as well. So it like changes the function and the efficiency of the algae, as well as sort of like moving them and sort of killing them off.
Oh, okay. That's
interesting. So depending on what system they use, it can adjust how the algae work within the water column. So quite an alternative way to look at it. Quite interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's super interesting, actually. That's
okay. I've got one more question for you. It's my last question so far, and it's around removing stuff from the water. So today, actually, before the call, someone sent me a link talking about microplastics. And it's a limited study. So I haven't even read it yet, but I just read the headline of it. So sorry, anyone that finds it, and I'm wrong on anything here. But I think it said that 77% of however many people were tested have been found to have microplastics in their blood.
Yes.
So, and I'm not surprised, because we're picking it up in air quality monitors now. I know in London there's some air quality assessments, and they're finding microplastics in the air. So we're clearly breathing it in, and it's getting into our systems and our blood somehow. So, is that something that's been looked at? Because microplastics, again, I could be terribly wrong here. This is not my area of expertise in any way, but I always think of it as surely they're just sort of hydrocarbons in like a slightly different form, right? Because it's all from sort of fossil fuels and things. So in theory, you should see more things in the environment starting to eat them. Because I know there's some bacteria and things they found in the ocean that are starting to eat and break down plastic. But all it does is they eat a bit, but of course that's actually making more microplastics or nanoplastics even. I met someone recently who's creating nanoplastics, and I thought, I'm not entirely sure if that's a good idea because it's even smaller than microplastics. It's like 10 times smaller or 100 times smaller than the human hair or something crazy like that. Yes. And I thought, not sure how good that is they're putting out. But anyway, I'm interested because obviously you mentioned a couple of ways that they remove things from water, for instance. So I was just wondering if you know of anything that's been done around microplastics and dealing with that, because I've had a number of people ask me about it recently.
Yes, well, there are a lot of ways to deal with plastic waste right now. Actually, there are fungal strains that are being tested right now to eat the plastic of different kind of plastics in order to make a resin or to convert it into biomass and use it as food, right? There are a lot of efforts towards that here in Mexico, actually, that I know of, that people working with fungal fungal species, with bacterial species mainly, and enzymes in processes to degrade the plastic. So it's something that it needs to be done, because as you said, now we're starting to get microplastic in the air, and that's gonna change everything, because the airways in our lungs gets blocked or can get blocked by the microplastics, and that's super and once it gets blocked, you cannot take or clean it, right? Well, how are you gonna do that, right? So that's a problem. And I think it's more like every person in the world, there's a study or something like that we eat like the amount of a credit card every month in microplastics. Something like that, right? It's something super. It's a really big problem. It's just
it's
super
the same with a lot of things, isn't it? Like we had another guest on, Dave Golson, who wrote the book Silent Earth, and in one of the studies he mentions, I've got the book here somewhere, that 100% of children tested in Switzerland have got neonicotinoids in their spinal fluid. And a neonicotinoid is a pesticide used for killing insects, but it's a neurotoxin. And 100% of children tested have got it in their spinal fluid. It's like a pretty terrifying sort of statistic, isn't it? And you start thinking, I've actually this month, so I'm coughing a bit now. Apologies, everyone. But I've actually had a really bad lung infection over the last sort of month, which made me quite ill. So, it's horrible when you get these things. But the problems that are arising, they're only going to get worse. If you're asthmatic and then you've got that added as well, it's an even, it's yet something else to bother you. Someone was talking to me the other day suggesting it could be the new sort of asbestos, because actually we haven't been exposed to it for that long to see the impacts. And the impacts of asbestos are not that long, but a while to sort of come about. And because these fibers essentially can work their ways into your lung, is there the same sort of risk around that potentially, who knows? So it's always a bit scary, really, isn't it? So let's move away from that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is super scary, my friend. And algae. In that matter, what I've heard of with algae that is like removing plastics and microplastics is most to the via of adhesion. They stick those plastics stick to the body of the algae and get stuck in it. And when you take out the algae, the plastics goes out of water and stuff. And that's like the normal behavior of the algae with the plastic nature within the water. But it's super bad for all of us that we are starting to have microplastics in the air, because that only means that it's the plastic waste that we have is it's a lot. I mean, that is a lot. That's the only way that you have that we have a lot of production, we have a lot of waste, and not to have it in the air as a microplastic that floats with the air and then gets into your water and to your airways. We're gonna have a big problem regarding lung diseases in the future if we don't stop this in the next years. And what you said about those kids in Switzerland, that's super sad. I mean, we always knew happened. We always knew that's what's most sad about it. We always knew that could happen. We always knew that putting fertilizers and putting different molecules in the earth that doesn't break down.
Especially when it's stuff that you eat as well, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a real problem also with cosmetics and molecules in food and cosmetics. All of those molecules that they said, okay, it's okay to put it in. And then they say, okay, no, don't put it in these products, like the colorant. You cannot put some colorants in the food products, but some of those colorants are still in cosmetic products. And some of the guys were like, okay, why they can be in cosmetic products and why they cannot be on food products if the metabolization is different? Yes, but I mean, if I got some of the in a cream or something like that, and I get it like in my mouth or something like that, it's still bad for me. If I get in my eyes for some reason,
it's all going to the same place, right? Yeah. Well, and your skin will absorb through your skin as well anyway. I mean, again, it's quite terrifying as well how some of it's. We have to do another podcast on this, I think. But it's terrifying as well how the testing is done. So as I understand it, for sort of pesticides. So also just to clarify, pesticides cover everything, whether it be fungicide, herbicide, insecticide. All of those things fall under
everything.
Pesticide, anything that's considered a pest, basically, right? But what they've found is like some of those pesticides, when they come into contact, become way more potent. So, for instance, if you have like an insecticide, all of them will be tested like individually for like human consumption or whatever, the impact on the human body. But what they're not tested on is how they interact with each other and the increased potency. So it's been found that some insecticides and some fungicides increase the potency by like 25% or something like that when they come into contact. And an orange, like not even the flesh, like the bit you eat of an orange, has been found to have, I think it's 25 plus different pesticides in it, because a lot of the pesticides go into the plant, and like a neonicotinoid, for example, goes into the plant and into the fruit as well. So the fruit itself becomes like inoculated with this contaminant, and then you're eating it. So actually, like the volumes of this stuff you're consuming is actually really not good, and no one really knows what that concoction is going to do to you or is doing to you. You know, it's why a lot of people think it's why there's such high levels of increasing rates of cancer and all this kind of thing. It's triggered by that. It's become very dreary when we started off talking about lovely microalgae, right? And lamps and things. But it's interesting that, like, you know, solutions like this have a key role in tackling sort of those challenges and breaking down those contaminants potentially as well. So it's very interesting. It's a little sad that we're in this mess.
No, it's it's super interesting, Neil. And thanks for letting me explain everything here and talk about algae. That I love to talk about algae. And
I know that for sure. So I guess, well, we've sort of jumped ahead really a bit here, but we've sort of covered quite a lot of stuff already. The only thing I was going to mention, but you may have mentioned them all already, was around sort of emerging usage. So like we've talked a lot about what people are sort of doing already. Is there anything like really new that's being looked at for the role of algae? And also, are there any kind of emerging, we talked a lot about issues and challenges sort of already as well. Are there any sort of like big stumbling blocks like you guys are facing that you need to try and sort of get over, that are sort of limiting your expansion, or problems with the process or anything like that sort of you're trying to resolve that's limiting the rollout?
Well, the most limiting factor that we have right now in our process and with the algae that we are growing right now is the get to market part, because maybe what we are doing is the high value extracts from algae into the cosmetic industry, right? So you have a lot of regulations to follow. You have a lot of production process that you need to follow within regulations in order to get the quality of the material needed to those markets, right? And in order to get to that point is difficult because as a startup, the things you need became expensive at some point, right? They became expensive, and you need to continue to work towards that kind of path in order to get to what you need to sell. So that's very difficult to do so. But the microalgae market, as it is opening up. We are in a very specific area of market of microalgae. That's why we have been taking a little bit more time to get to the market. But right now we are entering it. But the most difficult part, besides that, is the technology. In order to have a volume to scale and to get to market, you need to have the technology that makes it cost efficient to do those processes, right? In lab research and in lab pilot production, everything works. Everything always works because you have a limited amount of production that always going to be the same, and you have really standardized the process and everything. It's gonna work because it's a small process. But when you're thinking into taking it to the market, and specifically into a big market like the cosmetic one, you need to increase your volume a lot. And that transition into increasing volumes, the technologies that are there to process the microalgae biomass are not there yet to process the industrial quantity of microalgae biomass, or if they are expensive. And that's where everything it needs to start taking a full connection with the volume, the technologies, the processes, and the market in a way that everything is connected, everything is cost effective, and the market is going to pay what you're building or what you're producing at a price that makes it good for you and good for them. So that's something really, really difficult to do. And that's what we are doing. But that's the application that we are focusing right now, the most high value application. But as a research point of view, the new applications that Algae and Alice is working on is mostly the energy generation using microalgae molecules. I mean, if they receive sunlight and they transform that sunlight into chemical energy, what we are trying to do right now is to get that energy and transform it into electrical energy that we can use directly to power our home appliances and to power our processes. Like if you have algae that's generating oxygen, that's generating electricity to all the process that regards algae, you're gonna have a full net zero or neutral full process because it's complete. It's complete. And at the end, the algae that's generating the electricity, you're going to use it also to produce another set of molecules that you're going to introduce to the market. And in a sustainable way, you just replace your solar panels, right? I mean, that's what we are working right now, but we are doing it in a way that's very innovative. I cannot talk about how we are doing it, but we are changing the energy generation or energy introduction methods with algae. So that's a new application, and I mean it's gonna start taking a lot in a lot of markets and a lot of places this application because it's completely renewable. I mean it's like getting the sustainable solar panel, the most efficient sustainable solar panel there is. The algae is the molecules that gets translated into energy is almost every light. Almost all the light that gets hit into the algae gets transformed, and that's something really really helpful and really good for the things that we are developing. So that's a quite new application, Neil. But you're gonna see a lot of it later on. We're gonna talk a lot. Yeah, but that's some of it.
Perfect. Well, that's been super interesting. So thank you so much for your time. Going over everything to do with algae and like the range of applications and all that kind of thing. It's amazing, really, just what is possible with it and what it can do. And But also, as an emerging technology, it's also got all those challenges that sort of come with that territory, doesn't it? And trying to make sure that we can kind of move all these things forward in the best way that we can. I don't know, is there anything else you wanted to sort of mention on any points or anything before we sort of wrap up at all? But if not, I mean, it's been incredibly interesting, even just this. So, and again, it would be great if you're able to have a look around your lab and send us some footage that we'll cut back into this episode. So hopefully, if you're listening or watching, you will have already seen that. But that would be fantastic as well, and explain a bit more of the process and how some of the bits in the lab work. But yeah, anything else you wanted to mention at all?
I'd love to send you the information. And yes, well, just I want to say thanks to all watching, and thanks for your patience, and thanks for being interested in algae. We're gonna be here where you can find us at alice.com, www.alicemty.com. We're gonna place a little link here just to also, or maybe we can do that. You just have the page, and you can, and maybe you can visit us and see what we are working on, and to have a little more in-depth knowledge of what we are doing. And it's been amazing, Neil. Really, thanks a lot for inviting me and for letting me talk about algae and about water resilience and about circularity. It's been amazing. I appreciate it a lot. And I mean, thanks to
no,
everyone.
You're welcome. Pleasure to have you. And I'm looking forward to talking in the future and seeing some of the projects when they're up and running. And I should also just add as well, if you're based in the UK watching this and you want to look at some kind of project, you can also reach out to me and Water Offsets, because we're working with Ramon to try and bring some of these technologies and solutions and trials to the UK. So if you just so happen to run a water treatment plant or a company with lots of contaminated water or outflows of chemicals or anything like that, or lots of contaminated air or CO2, whatever it may be, get in touch as well, because we might be able to help you, introduce you to Ramon, and sort of help get things moving and looking at review the projects and things too. So it's a super exciting time. Really glad to be working with you, Ramon, and really look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Yes, looking forward to it. See you soon, my friend. Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
I hope you've enjoyed the episode so far. Here's a quick message from one of our sponsors. Make sustainability a priority throughout the design process with a suite of tools built specifically for landscape architecture and design. Vectorworks gives you the freedom to follow your imagination wherever it may lead, with remarkably flexible software that integrates BIM for landscape and GIS workflows. Sketch, model, and document in a single tool with the world's most design-centric BIM solution. Discover Vectorworks' landmark and design without limits. Visit vectorworks.net to learn more. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in learning more about sustainability solutions, then check out our episode with Oliver Jones, where we talk about a really wide range of sustainability challenges, technologies and solutions, with applications all across the modern world. A really interesting episode, and probably one of my favourites, to be honest. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share to friends and colleagues, of course, who might be interested. A huge thank you to our incredible sponsors, Vectorworks and Water Offsets, our kind supporters, Gillian Goodson Design and the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, and of course, NDLA and Monsterdon for powering this episode, as well as a big thank you to Ramon for his time.